Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the quiet corners of history, the kind of places where answers don't exist, but theories never stop multiplying. So if you're lying in bed, phone dimmed, volume low, just settle in, because for the next little while we're wandering through 20 of the strangest, most frustrating puzzles humanity never managed to solve. These are the mysteries that historians, archaeologists, and conspiracy theorists have been arguing about for centuries and will probably keep arguing about long after all of us are gone. Some are ancient, some are weirdly recent. All of them make you wonder how we've managed to figure out quantum physics but still can. T explained a few missing ships or why a certain stone slab keeps whispering in languages no one can read. Let's start with something light. You've probably heard of it because it's the go-to mystery whenever someone wants to sound deep in a documentary voiceover. Atlantis, the mythical island of perfection, advanced civilization, and probably really smug citizens. Plato mentioned it over 2,000 years ago, claiming it was an island empire that fell into the sea in a single day and night of misfortune, which sounds dramatic, even for ancient Greece. According to him, Atlantis wasn't just rich, it was morally superior to, but then it got arrogant, the gods got mad, and splash, it sank. Over the centuries, everyone from scholars to treasure hunters to guy with a metal detector on YouTube has claimed to know where it was. Maybe it was in the Mediterranean, maybe under Antarctica. Maybe it was just Plato trying to make a point about hubris, and we all overanalyzed it for 2,000 years. Modern historians mostly agree it was probably just a parable, but that hasn't stopped people from searching, because apparently we'd rather believe in lost continents than admit that Plato just liked metaphors anyway. Let's move from a city that might never have existed to a colony that very much did until it didn't. In 1587, a group of English settlers set up camp on Roanoke Island, off what's now North Carolina. They planted crops, built houses, and waited for supplies from England. Their governor, John White, sailed home to get help, but by the time he returned, 3 years later, the entire colony had vanished. No bodies, no battle, no signs of struggle. Just the word Croatoan carved into a tree, which sounds like the setup for a horror movie. And honestly, that's how it's been treated ever since. White thought maybe they'd moved to nearby Croatoan Island, but storms, politics, and England's general chaos with Spain meant no one ever checked properly. Over time, theories have piled up. Maybe they were absorbed by local tribes, maybe they starved, maybe aliens, because there's always an alien theory. Archaeologists have found a few clues, pottery shards here, a European buckle there, but nothing close to a full answer. It's one of those mysteries that's somehow both fascinating and mundane. Like yes, an entire colony vanished. But knowing history, it was probably just bad logistics. You knew this one was coming. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built around 2560 BCE, is still one of the largest and most precise structures ever made. And yes, we know how they built it. Kind of. But kind of isn't exactly comforting when you're looking at 2.3 million stone blocks weighing up to 80 tons each. No, aliens didn't build it, let's just clear that up now. But how humans did it with copper tools, wooden sledges, and manpower still stretches belief. The ramps theory is the most accepted one, that workers dragged blocks up massive ramps. But no one's ever found evidence of those ramps at full scale, which means Egyptologists are still politely arguing about it like academics do with journal papers instead of fistfights. And then there's the alignment with the stars, the internal chambers that no one knew existed until the 21st century, and the still mysterious purpose of the Grand Gallery. If the pyramids were a group project, it's the kind where one guy did all the work and everyone else just nodded. Now we drift over to something that's equal parts fascinating and headache-inducing. The Voynich manuscript, a small book written sometime in the early 1400s in a language no one can read. The text, total nonsense. The drawings, weird plants that don't exist, naked ladies floating in green pools, and cosmic diagrams that look like someone's astrology homework after too much mead. It's named after Wilfred Voynich, the book dealer who bought it in 1912 and immediately realized he had no idea what it said. Since then, cryptographers, linguists, and AI programs have all taken a crack at decoding it. Some say it's a lost scientific treatise. Others think it's an elaborate hoax, maybe from the Renaissance equivalent of a bored prankster. And still, no one knows. It sits quietly in Yale's Beinecke Library, taunting everyone who looks at it, which, honestly, is the perfect metaphor for academia. In December 1872, a British ship named De Gratia found another vessel drifting silently in the Atlantic. It was the Mary Celeste, fully seaworthy, food and cargo intact, but completely empty. The captain, his wife, their daughter, and 7 crew members had simply vanished. No signs of struggle, no blood, no distress call. Just a ship calmly floating like it didn't notice everyone had left. Theories, dozens. Pirates, mutiny, a storm, alcohol fumes, sea monsters, because sure, why not? Most likely the crew abandoned ship thinking it was about to explode from a leaky cargo of industrial alcohol, and then couldn't find their way back once they realized it wasn't. It's tragic in that quiet, bureaucratic way disasters sometimes are. No villain, no drama, just human error, bad timing, and the vast emptiness of the ocean. let's float over to another mystery, one buried not at sea, but under stone. Massive stones, neatly arranged in a circle on the Salisbury Plain, built around 2500 BCE, long before cranes, hydraulics, or anyone thinking about zoning permits. Each stone weighs up to 25 tons, and some were hauled from over 150 miles away. So, naturally, the question is, how? And maybe even more importantly, why we know it wasn't aliens. Though again, someone on the History Channel would love to argue otherwise. It could have been a temple, a calendar, or a burial site. Maybe all three. Recent digs found cremated remains and evidence of seasonal festivals, so maybe it was just the prehistoric version of a big social gathering. Whatever it was, it's still standing, which is more than you can say for most modern architecture after a few decades. Massive stones, neatly arranged in a circle on the Salisbury Plain, built around 2500 BCE, long before cranes, hydraulics, or anyone thinking about zoning permits. Each stone weighs up to 25 tons, and some were hauled from over 150 miles away, so, naturally, the question is, how? And maybe even more importantly, why? We know it wasn't aliens. Though again, someone on the History Channel would love to argue otherwise. It could have been a temple, a calendar, or a burial site. Maybe all three. Recent digs found cremated remains and evidence of seasonal festivals, so maybe it was just the prehistoric version of a big social gathering. Whatever it was, it's still standing. Which is more than you can say for most modern architecture after a few decades. If you're still awake, congratulations. You've already made it through Atlantis, Roanoke, and a handful of other unsolved headaches that make historians question their career choices. So now, let's wander into the next few mysteries. Some are buried underground, some probably never existed in the first place, and a few involve priceless artifacts that somehow just walked off. Yes, that Ark, the sacred chest said to hold the Ten Commandments, built by Moses' followers, carried through deserts, and supposedly charged with divine power. According to the Bible, it could bring victory in battle, strike people dead, or occasionally cause mass panic. So basically, the world's first weapon of mass theology. The Ark was housed in Solomon's temple in Jerusalem until the Babylonians destroyed the place around 587 BCE. After that, silence. Some say priests hid it before the invasion. Some claim it was smuggled to Ethiopia, where the Ethiopian Orthodox Church insists it is still kept guarded by one monk who is never allowed to leave or be replaced, which sounds both noble and suspiciously convenient. Others think it's just long gone. Wood and gold eventually rot and melt, even sacred ones. But the mystery lingers, because, let's be honest, everyone secretly wants to believe there's still a glowing golden box out there, quietly humming under some forgotten church. Cleopatra, the seventh last queen of Egypt, self-styled goddess, expert manipulator of Roman politics, and the woman whose eyeliner has inspired about 6 billion Halloween costumes. We know how she died, at least according to legend. A snake bite, a dramatic suicide, and a world-changing power shift. But we have no idea where she's buried. Ancient sources said she was laid to rest beside Mark Antony, her equally doomed Roman lover, somewhere near Alexandria. The problem: the city's been hit by earthquakes, floods, and modern construction. So whatever grand tomb they built is now likely under several meters of seawater and centuries of sediment. Archaeologists have tried searching near the Toposiris Magna temple, convinced they're close. Every new discovery gets a dramatic headline: Cleopatra's tomb found, followed by a quiet update a week later saying, actually no. Still, the dream persists, because if anyone deserved a perfectly hidden tomb, it's Cleopatra, the queen who turned her own death into a legend. The Ninth Legion, also known as Legio Hispana, was one of Rome's most decorated military units. They fought across Europe for nearly a century. Then, sometime after 120 CE, they vanished. Records just stopped mentioning them. No big battle, no mass graves, nothing. Some theories say they were wiped out in northern Britain by rebellious tribes, which would have been very on brand for Roman overconfidence. Others think they were reassigned to the east and destroyed in Armenia. And one theory claims they weren't destroyed at all. They were quietly disbanded, like a company that didn't want to admit bankruptcy. The mystery isn't just about what happened, it's about how Rome, the bureaucracy-loving empire, somehow lost an entire legion of 5,000 soldiers on paper. Imagine misplacing a whole army because someone forgot to file a report. During the 18th century, Prussia and Russia decided to outdo each other in the category of unnecessary opulence. The result was the Amber Room, a chamber built entirely out of carved amber panels, gold leaf and mirrors, housed in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. Visitors called it the eighth wonder of the world. Then World War II happened. When the Nazis invaded in 1941, they dismantled the entire room, packed it into crates, and shipped it to Kingsburg, modern-day Colonies. And after that, nothing. The city was bombed to rubble in 1945, and the Amber Room disappeared. Some believe it was destroyed in the fire. Others think it was hidden in tunnels, or sunk in the Baltic Sea, waiting for some future diver to find it. Russia rebuilt a perfect replica in 2003, but the original remains one of the most glamorous lost property cases in history. Around 1200 BCE, almost every major civilization in the eastern Mediterranean fell apart. The Mycenaeans, the Hittites, the Egyptians, the city-states of QAnon, all collapsed within a few decades. Trade routes vanished, writing systems disappeared, cities burned, and were never rebuilt. And the weirdest part, no one knows why. For years, historians blamed the mysterious sea peoples, seafaring raiders who supposedly destroyed everything in their path, but that theory is more guesswork than fact. Modern research suggests a perfect storm of problems: drought, famine, earthquakes, rebellion, and economic chaos. Basically the ancient equivalent of everything going wrong at once, but without Wi-Fi to complain about it. Still, the cause remains fuzzy. The Bronze Age didn't end because of one event. It just quietly unraveled, like a very expensive tapestry left in the rain. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera found a shipwreck filled with statues and artifacts. Among them was a corroded lump of bronze that looked like nothing special until someone realized it had gears. Lots of them. Turns out, it's a 2,000-year-old analog computer. It could predict eclipses, track planetary movements, and even calculate Olympic dates. No one knows who built it. The craftsmanship is so precise that nothing close to it appears again for over 1,000 years. It's like finding an iPhone in a Viking grave. Some credit Archimedes or a lost school of Greek engineers. Others think it was a one-off miracle of ancient science that just never got replicated. Whatever the truth, the Antikythera mechanism sits in a museum in Athens, half destroyed, and still quietly showing off that the ancients were way smarter than we usually give them credit for. We've crossed oceans, lost a few ancient civilizations, and even misplaced a room made entirely of amber. Now let's wander further through buried treasures, ghostly signals, and a few puzzles that probably exist just to annoy future historians. Out in the Peruvian desert, there's a dry plateau etched with enormous designs. Monkeys, birds, spiders, perfectly straight lines, stretching for miles. The Nazca lines were carved over 1,500 years ago, long before airplanes existed, and are so massive that you can really only see them properly from the sky, which immediately makes people say aliens, because apparently we just can't help ourselves. But there are more reasonable theories. There might have been ritual pathways, used for walking ceremonies to call rain, or symbols meant for the gods, drawn so large they could be seen from above, assuming the gods had good eyesight. Whatever they meant, they've survived centuries of wind and heat, lying out there like a giant doodle humanity never finished explaining. A long piece of linen, bearing the faint image of a man's face and body. To believers, it's the burial cloth of Jesus himself. To skeptics, it's medieval religious fanfiction with really good shading. The Shroud of Turin first appeared in the 1300s in France and has since been examined, photographed, carbon dated, and endlessly debated. Tests in the 1980s dated it to the Middle Ages, but later researchers argued those tests might have sampled repaired fabric instead of the original cloth. The image itself seems to be some sort of surface oxidation, not paint, not dye, not something easy to replicate. No one can fully explain how it got there, so believers keep believing, scientists keep shrugging. And the shroud sits in its climate-controlled case in Turin, quietly reminding everyone that faith and evidence rarely play by the same rules. Off the coast of Nova Scotia lies Oak Island, a small, unimpressive patch of land that's been swallowing treasure hunters for over 2 centuries. In 1795, some teenagers found a circular depression in the ground and started digging. They hit wooden platforms every 10 feet a sign. They thought of buried treasure. What they actually found was an elaborate trap. Every time someone dug deeper, the pit flooded from hidden tunnels connected to the sea. Since then, dozens of expeditions have tried and failed to reach the bottom. People have spent fortunes and lives chasing what might just be a natural sinkhole. Theories range from pirate treasure to the Holy Grail, to, my favorite, a secret vault built by the Freemasons because reasons. Today, it's mostly a tourist attraction and a History Channel marathon topic. Still, no one knows what, if anything, is actually down there. Somewhere between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico lies a stretch of ocean that allegedly swallows ships and planes without warning. The Bermuda Triangle, the vacation spot of conspiracy theorists and the bane of rational pilots. Stories exploded in the mid-20th century. Ships vanishing, compasses going wild, planes disappearing mid-flight. Books sold millions claiming it was aliens, underwater portals, or magnetic anomalies. In reality, the area sees heavy traffic, unpredictable weather, and human error. The usual suspects, but it's hard to compete with a good mystery headline. The ocean is dangerous. Docent T-cell as many paperbacks as gateway to another dimension. Still, even skeptics admit there are cases that don't quite add up, and that's enough to keep the legend alive, floating somewhere between myth and maritime insurance claim. June 30, 1908, a massive explosion flattened 800 square miles of Siberian forest, Trees were scorched and knocked down in a perfect radial pattern, but there was no crater, no meteorite, no clear cause. The blast was so strong it was felt thousands of miles away. Scientists now believe it was an airburst, a space rock exploding mid-air before hitting the ground. But since it happened in the middle of nowhere, no one actually saw it happen. So naturally, theories spread. Mini black holes, alien spacecraft, secret weapons. Because if you're going to have an explosion that big, you might as well make it weird. Even now, no one's found any real fragments, just burned trees, eyewitness confusion, and one of the biggest unsolved bangs in history, Massachusetts. There's a large boulder covered in mysterious carvings. They've been there for centuries, long before Europeans arrived, and no one can agree on who made them or what they mean. Some say they're Native American markings, others insist they're Viking runes, Portuguese explorers, or a secret alien message because of course someone said that. The rock's been studied, argued over, and moved into a museum. But every explanation feels just as speculative as the last. It's one of those puzzles that probably has a simple answer. We just lost the key to understanding it. Yes, this really happened. In July 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, one woman started dancing in the street uncontrollably. Within days, dozens joined her, then hundreds. They danced for weeks, some collapsing from exhaustion, some allegedly dying. Authorities, instead of stopping it, tried to encourage them. They opened guild halls for safer dancing and hired musicians to keep things orderly, which predictably did not help. Historians still aren't sure what caused it. Mass hysteria, ergot poisoning from moldy bread, a mix of famine, fear, and collective burnout. Honestly, it sounds like the 1500s version of social media trends. The dancing eventually stopped on its own, and everyone involved quietly pretended it never happened. But the story remains one of history's most absurdly real mysteries. Let's end with something modern and cosmic. In 1977, an astronomer at Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope detected a strange, strong signal from space. It lasted 72 seconds and came from a point near the constellation Sagittarius. It was narrow, structured, and looked exactly like what scientists hoped an alien transmission might look like. The astronomer circled it on the data printout and wrote one word: wow, hence the name, the WOW signal. No one's ever heard it again. No satellites matched. No stars nearby seemed responsible. It's just there. One unexplained blip in the cosmic static 48 years later. Most likely explanation: a natural radio burst. Most fun explanation: someone out there said hi once and then never followed up. So there you have it, 20 of humanity's favorite loose threads. Cities that sank, tombs that vanished, ships that sailed without crew, and messages from the stars we still don't understand. If history has a lesson here, it's that for every mystery we solve, another one quietly replaces it. And maybe that's the real charm of it. The idea that some questions aren't meant to have answers. So, close your eyes. Let the unknowns drift around in your head. And remember, the past doesn't always whisper its secrets. Sometimes, it just sits there in silence and lets us wonder.